I'm Ashleigh Carter.
And I'm Bill I, and we're here at Bierstadt Lager House with Craft Beer and Brewing's Tip of the Week.
Even if you don't have a spooning device or are not using one, I do think that any amount of natural carbonation that you can absorb into the beer is beneficial. You have to be a little bit careful if you find that the beer itself is a little bit stinky and not in the good SO2 way, the flinty struck match way. If it's a little more H2S or that kind of stinky, eggy sulfur, you really don't want to close up the tank at that point. If you close up the tank at that point, it's going to end up in your actual beer. It's really hard to get rid of sulfur if you don't mechanically scrub it. Any amount of CO2, even if it's just 1.5 volumes of CO2, any amount of CO2 that you can get into the beer, beneficial for head retention, and it's beneficial for the mouthfeel of the beer, the kind of the texture of the beer. When we're thinking about transferring and doing a filter, so we actually do filter carbonated beer, and by doing that, we actually umbilical, we call it, our tanks together so we can keep that CO2 into solution all the way through. And then we do touch it up. And part of that touching up process, I think oftentimes we kind of think our work is done at that point. But by going very, very slow and carbonating in a very methodical, slow way, improves the head retention and improves the texture of the beer. I'm a big fan, especially in pale lagers, of a very punchy texture, especially when it comes to Pilsner or to Pils. I like that carbonation draft to be 2.9 volumes. I think that dark beers and some of the malty beers don't necessarily benefit that much. So as far as Helles goes, we're more about 2.8 volumes on draft. And Dunkel even a little bit less at 2.7 volumes on draft. And I think that carbonic acid is one of those ingredients that people don't think about a lot, but it can actually change the flavor of the beer. Let's just say, for example, you have a beer that maybe didn't attenuate as far as you wanted it to, and you're finding it tastes a little sweet. If you increase the carbonation on that, it's gonna balance back some of that sweetness. So carbonation is a really cool trick, just like all the other things you do, that you can kind of manipulate the flavor of the beer over time. When it comes to canning and kegging, we have two separate carbonations for both of those processes. We don't use bright tanks, like serving tanks. And part of the reason for that is, well, I don't like to be cold. It's clean serving tanks. But one of the other reasons is if you have a beer on tap over time, it's going to continue to absorb that CO2 and it's going to become harder and harder to pour over time. So I really like the idea of, on a keg, having that all in one basically single serving. Chances are you're not going to have it overcarbonated, especially if you're using blended gas. In a can though, I think that because of the way a can lends itself, and canning is very, very new to us, I really think that a can needs more carbonation than draft. And part of that is that when you're pouring beer on draft, the carbonation is staying in solution the whole time and kind of releasing itself at the end. Whereas if you have something like a can, the second you open that can up, all the carbonation is released immediately. And so having more carbonation in there to kind of overcome that, to me, makes the beer taste a little better and is less lifeless. So you do want to see our pH right around 4.3 for a finished beer, and that's what most of the German beers end up at. So trying to get that final pH, the carbonic acid, all these things to come together to be the beer that you want it to be at the end, to drink it. Part of that dispense, obviously for us, we truly believe in glassware. We truly believe in the way that you present something to someone. And I think that you took all this time and all this care and did all these things to make this amazing beer, that when you serve it, you should also take care of it the same way. And giving people an experience in your tasting room is something that I think we've done really well. Making sure beers are always served with foam. Let's bring back foam. Let's see it at every single dive bar. Let's see it everywhere if we can, is seeing this idea of foam. Getting that carbonation right, getting the finished beer right, and not just getting all the processes up until the end right. Really taking care of your beer at the end, making sure it's served properly, however you want to do that, making sure it's served with foam, and educating people on what beer should be. It's the only beverage that makes and creates foam, and keeps foam rather, and so we should showcase that because it is a testament to the quality of a brewer by how much foam and how sturdy the foam is.
For more on ideas and approach to lager brewing, click the link below.